So we've got ourselves some Havelock wool to insulate our van, and it contains multiple uses, such as
1.
a mysterious disguise. It's me, Ben. 2.
A fashionable new wardrobe.
Chic, chic-posh, both.
3. Increase your bust.
And masculine physique. Oh! Look what's behind us. That is a wall of insulation, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. Wool.
Shawls.
Comforters, socks, underwear.
Vests.
Great for hiking, but also great for insulating your van. So insulation is just as important for your van as it is, say, your house. It's probably even more important, and there's a lot more variables to consider when you're choosing what product to go with. Now, if you've seen my previous van build, when I insulated, I used a closed cell foam. I just did a bit of research and saw that the closed cell foam was thin, but still had good R value, and it was at a price point I could afford. But this time around, we wanted to try using wool. Now, if you've seen our video where we did our heated subfloor, we used a foam board, and then we used Reflectix as well to hopefully, bounce the heat back from the ground up. It was kind of an experiment, but we didn't end up using wool because we didn't think it was gonna be able to do what we wanted it to. We thought it was just gonna hold all the heat down there.
So before we get into the installation process, let's talk a little bit about Havelock wool and some of the benefits. So Havelock wool sources their material from farms in New Zealand as a byproduct of the sheep industry.
Right? Euros, gyros, whatever you call them.
Euros. But you can have other types of euros.
Sure, falafel.
Another bonus is that their manufacturing process utilizes electricity rather than other non-renewable resources like fossil fuels. Havelock also uses high-quality wool fibers rather than scraps, and they stick with a specific breed of sheep that they've determined is best suited for insulation.
Now on their website, there's a bunch of comparisons between different types of insulations. So they have wool versus fiberglass or cellulose or cotton or mineral wool or spray foam. So you can compare wool to these other insulation options and decide whether it's something you want to give a shot.
And if you're looking for more specific information, you can go to their website and look at their environmental product declaration, which has the environmental impact of all of their products, their packaging, their manufacturing process, all the way to your consumer. So now that you know what it is and where it comes from, what are some of the benefits?
Well, there's a lot. We're just gonna go over the key benefits that we've jotted down on our little script that we wrote. So condensation is a big thing when living in a van. You're constantly changing climates. Sometimes you're hot inside, you breathe a lot, and then the outside's cold and you have condensation on your walls. And when you have things like closed cell foam, that water will build up, which then might lead to, say, rust or mold. And wool can absorb that moisture and then release it back without losing any of its insulative qualities.
And how efficient of an insulation is it? Well, when you're talking about insulation power, you're really talking about R value, which is a fancy way of saying a material's resistance to heat flow. So the higher the R value, the better the insulator. Havelock wool comes in with an R value of 3.6 per inch of wool, which is relatively comparable to other products. Some other products have higher R values, but when you take into consideration the fact that wool maintains its R value despite moisture and temperature, it's kind of a winner in the arena of boxing.
Now, a noise reduction coefficient, or an NRC, is a way of measuring the amount of sound deadening a material has. When you have 100% NRC, that means it cancels all of the noise. Now, Havelock wool comes in at a whopping 90%.
And like we mentioned earlier, wool is an organic, natural material. And so at the end of its life, it can actually be deposited back into the ground. It's biodegradable, compostable, and it's not gonna accumulate in landfills or end up in the ocean. Especially in an industry like construction, where there's a lot of waste and byproducts that end up in landfills, you can rest easy knowing
that the products you're using aren't gonna end up there. Oh, and it's fire resistant. Now that we have all that out of the way, let's get into the installation. As a quick disclaimer, I would suggest installing your DC and AC electrical wiring prior to installing your insulation so you don't have to fight it moving forward. We did that. We haven't released a video on that yet because we're gonna be doing an all-encompassing electrical video, which is a very big undertaking, and so we thought we'd get this out prior. So, before you insulate, run your wires, especially if you're gonna be running them through the ceiling and those cavities you're gonna have to fill up. So when it comes to purchasing your wool, if you go on their website, you'll find that they have this chart with a bunch of different vans and sizes with suggestions on like square footage and the amount of bags you wanna buy in order to insulate the entire van. And since we have a 170-inch wheelbase van, they recommend between 4 and 6 bags.
And we bought 3.
So we came up short, but we'll get into that later.
Was it enough, Ben?
When it first arrived, it came in 2 bags. We ordered one little 100 square foot bag and then a giant 200 square foot bag.
So when we originally put our order in for 300 square feet of wool, it came in plastic bagging. And when we went back later and had to purchase additional bats, it actually came in a naked cardboard box.
Now, if you do get yours in a bag, they say that you should cut it open right when you get it to let it acclimate and kind of re-expand, I guess, because it's very compressed. It's about 2 squatty bends. What's this, Rock?
He's gonna eat it.
What's in there, Rock? Oh! Shred it up. But once you get it, you'll see it comes in several sheets just like this that are about 16 inches wide by 48 inches long, and they're roughly 2 inches thick. And when you look at your van in the cavities, if you have a Sprinter, you'll see that the depth in those cavities is about 3 to 4 inches depending on the location. So we ended up putting 2 pieces together and filling our walls. But before we did that, we had to figure out the best way to keep all the insulation to the wall since we couldn't really glue it. We went with a moisture resistant nylon string that you see like in masonry. And the plan was just to make a web.
You basically want to create a spider web that will hold your insulation temporarily until you're ready to install your permanent walls.
And we didn't have to use that on every single cavity. We just did it on the main areas that didn't have like pockets where we can stuff the corners in to hold itself in. But you'll find out as you go. The main area being the ceiling.
So I saw a lot of people that were creating individual web designs in between each rib.
Julie thought, you know what?
That's
a
dumb.
faster way to do that
Is run one line from the back of the van underneath the ribs all the way to the front. And we did that about 8 times. So we had 8 strings running parallel to the walls of the van. And I left them loose on the ends because I thought as we go, you know, we'll throw bats of insulation in there, and when we get to the end, we'll tighten it all up, and it'll be one long string the whole
super efficient
time.
But we'll talk about how that worked out in a minute.
And keep in mind, ideally, you're installing your walls and your ceiling right after you insulate. Because it is a soft organic material, it's not stiff, and it's not gonna want to necessarily stay in place without assistance.
Right, and as you drive and gravity works against you, it starts to fall and sag and droop. You know, that's why we've driven it over 4,000 miles in
Waited
all sorts of
a month or so.
conditions, and we still don't have walls
We're
up.
not ready. I've heard people say that it does smell like sheep or farm animals, and then other people say that they don't smell anything. But it does smell like farm. It smells good. Let's get to insulating.
Julie started off by insulating the cavities.
So originally I started by cutting strips of this for these cavities, but I think that it works best if you kind of tear it apart and ball it together. And this is how Havelock recommends you do it, rather than just sticking like a solid strip in there. You don't need to compress it too tight. They say just kind of like make a snowball out of it and then aim. So I did this, and I stuffed in all of the cavities. Next stop is this cavity here, which you can actually access from underneath. So it should be pretty easy, and we'll see how it goes.
And she did that first because once you start to fill those larger openings, you're gonna close off your access to those tiny little cavities that are all over the van. And you'll find that every little like pocket or hole in the wall takes like a whole bath. It just keeps going and going and going. Now what's this?
This is a dowel rod that I originally bought for gardening, and I've just been using it to help kind of those hard to reach areas, so you can kind of shove it in there. I used it in all of these cavities.
You got this.
I have this shish kebab skewer that I've been using, you know, to get in some tight spots. It's really straightforward. Any device that's gonna assist you in filling the cavity, use it.
So once we had all the cavities filled, we started to insulate the large pockets.
So I'm just kind of estimating what you're gonna need.
Our van got hit by a meteor there before we bought it. Look out, folks, the big one.
All right, like so.
And I'll say, even with just this wall stuffed and not even those big panels, there's a huge sound difference in the van already. So I'm very curious, once the ceiling is all sealed up and these walls as well, how like quiet it's gonna be in here. Now, we've seen people take a lot of time and measure them out and take scissors and like X-Acto knives and cut them to the exact size.
It's easier to rip it than it is to cut it.
It sped it up by quite a bit. One of the things that you're gonna wanna do is fish insulation through the ceiling ribs. Oh.
Okay. So we're gonna do the ceiling support beams right now. We have a wire fish, so it'd be easiest to send this from one end, pop it out the other end, and then we'll basically like tie a long bat of insulation, long skinny sheet, and pull it back through.
Yeah.
Long skinny strip, fold it in half.
Hot dog style.
Hot dog style. And then we're gonna have to help feed it, and it's probably not gonna be great. Oh. It's going! You don't wanna rip, you know, tiny puffs for the ceiling ribs because it's such a narrow cavity and you have to fill 4 feet long of it. So that would, one, take forever, and you probably wouldn't do a really efficient job. So we finished insulating all the ceiling ribs. And now we're gonna insulate the large patches of ceiling, but my string wasn't long enough. So we tied quick little uni knots, which we learned from fly fishing, and extended all of our lines.
Because
like
as
2
we
feet.
go,
We need
these are gonna get like,
significantly,
you know, shorter and shorter and shorter. Okay, so as we're doing this ceiling insulation, we're gonna have to start fishing our wires through. So we've set one of our like lights through, and as we go, because we're starting to cover everything up, we're also gonna zip tie the remainder of our, well, we're tightening our zip ties of all of our wires. And we're noticing, like, for these, we're gonna start from the very back and make our way forward, since we're gonna be pulling slack from the front end of the van. And this is like one solid sheet, double layered. And so we have this, what, 2.5 inch gap here that we're also gonna have to come back through and add a little more. This stuff gets all in your face too. Do I still have chocolate over my face? We've been tiling all day. Oh yeah, see this thumb? Doesn't look bad right now. You can't really tell, but we'll see what it looks like in 4 days. And this is what my thumb looks like after 2 months.
ugly.
Because of the way we ran our strings, it was a lot of work. We had to go one at a time and then kind of re-tighten the string every single time because it ran the full length of the van. We realized like that doing, you know, between 2 columns of webbing would have been a lot easier because you could have got the insulation in there, tightened it once, and you're done. Instead, we had to go get it in, tighten it, loosen it back up, get the next one in, tighten it.
I saw
back
everyone
up.
doing it one way, and I thought, I'm going to test another way because maybe they're just all dumb. But it turns out
We're dumb. But
so do it all individually. Each column,
Yes.
string it, crisscross, web it back and forth individually, move on to the next one.
right. Look at this, it's looking crazy, like clouds.
So this is as far as we got with 300 square feet. So we have 3 more ceiling panels. These 2 side panels, the back doors, and last but not least, the headliner, which we gotta pop open and fill up.
And eventually we got it done. yes, we ran out of insulation and we had to wait another like week and a half until we could get back at it and then finish the ceiling. Now the doors on your van are extremely hollow and they're kind of a pain in the butt to insulate because you have all these cables and some have electrical wires running through them for like the tail lights and stuff like that. So you have to do a lot of like sizing and ripping. I think it ended up taking over 6 bats for us to insulate the rear doors.
Woo!
And we didn't even insulate the entire door because we're gonna try to put little cubbies there on the back.
That's beautiful.
All right, doors done. And then we ran out again and had to order more and then finish up the side panels of our van and then finally onto the headliner. All right, so I've pulled the headliner down. We have sized up the amount of insulation we're gonna need up here, and it seems like we've got 4 bats like we do on our paneling, and then another full that's folded up and put down, which is literally us like replicating this. It's almost the exact same. So what we're gonna do is work our way up. So I'm gonna put the bottom ones in first and then tape across it to hold it in place, and then the top and tape across it, and then we're gonna stuff the sides in. We've seen people just lay the bats down and then work it back into place, and they usually don't show the process of working back into place, so I assume it's a struggle, and that's why we decided to tape it. And then we had to fill the side cavities in, but we got those taped up, and it wasn't too bad. Crazy tape job, but all it needs to do is keep it up there while we put this back into place. But we added some here and filled that area. And we're just gonna finish up by adding there. And then guess what? What's that mean?
We can put it back up. You don't hit your head.
Little rubber grommets. They're not grommets. So fun. Go back up. Oh yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm not even close. We're now having to wrestle. Getting sweaty. Boom, boom. All right.
Is it hollow?
If I punch a hole through it. Before we were totally done, we went back and filled in the sides even more because
there's still a little gap from where the headliner departs from the body of the van.
Yeah, but with that, we were
Done.
fully insulated.
All right.
And that's that.
Whew.
Put her there.
Nice to meet you. It's a good strong handshake.
She cut me short. Look how she grabbed my hand. That's where she got me.
Nice to meet you.
Usually when you say put her there, it's a job well done, not a nice to meet you.
Job well done.
Look at that. We've got our ceiling, we got our walls, we got our doors. We're covered in wool. I don't know, what was your overall thoughts?
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically put it up there.
So I definitely feel like this van is far more insulated than my previous van. You know, I wouldn't have been able to take the closed cell foam and insulate the headliner like we could with this Havelock wool. And fitting all of the insulation into these cavities was super easy. I didn't have to get a bunch of spray foam or take a bunch of cubed cut off pieces of foam and then stick it in there and then spray foam it. And if I want, I can just pull it back out and get access to it, which we had to do later on.
Yeah.
We had to get access behind some of them to run another wire because we had forgotten one, and it was super easy. You know, like when you do spray foam or anything like that, it's done.
Yeah.
It's there. There's nothing you can do about it. This stuff is very like plug and play, and then you can remove it and put it right back. I still feel like the biggest thing that like surprised me was just the sound deadening, because once we had it in, it was like an entirely different space. We park a lot in parking lots to stay the night when we're traveling, which means cars and people are coming in and out, and if you want to get a good night's sleep, you really don't want to be hearing that. And this has like greatly reduced all of that outdoor sounds. And I also think like maybe we would try to use it on the subfloor as well. I think it would help reduce a lot of the road noise. But again, it would take a lot of bats. That's one of the biggest downsides, I feel, is how much we used and the amount it costs. But I guess that's the trade-off. you know, you have all of these benefits, it's sustainable, and sometimes that means it's gonna cost more. So if you've got a 170 wheelbase and you wanna use some Havelock wool, I would suggest going with 5 bags, and if you plan on doing the floor, you might have to end up getting something closer to 7. And that's that. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and then if you've been here, of course, like and
Help us.
comment.
No, my eyebrows. Stop it.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Day.
So I ate lunch before we recorded this, and I thought, I'm gonna brush my teeth so my breath doesn't smell bad. And Ben said, you can't brush your teeth more than twice a day. And I said, actually, you're supposed to brush your teeth technically after every meal. So now, my question to you is, how often do you brush your teeth? Twice a day?
I don't think you're supposed to do more than 2 or 3 because it hurts the enamel in your gums.
3 times a day?
Do you not even have to worry about it if you have like dentures?
Once a month?